Hello and welcome back. In the last section, we went ahead and created the Axios instance, which will allow us to get our data from the backend APIs. Okay, and now is the time to go ahead and actually use that Axios instance object and populate our catalog here that you see on the right hand side with the corresponding dish objects. Okay, I'm going to head over to the browse component, which is essentially the catalog component. And if you look here, we already have a row that's justified with the content as center, and that row contains one column and that has a slideshow here, which you see here. So what I'm going to do here, first thing is collapse the sidebar and give myself some space here. Okay, and I'm going to introduce one more row, and that's going to have similar characteristics here. Okay, and that's going to be row dot justify content center. Okay, and it's also going to have a margin top of 4, empty -4. All right, super. What happened to this? Don't need 40. Oops. Okay, let me get rid of this. Interestingly, it is not throwing up any suggestions. May have to, oops, Control V. Oh, there we go, super. And I think I need to, essentially say Tab Shift. I was actually doing a Control spacebar. It was actually Tab spacebar. Okay. So coming back to this, I'm going to go ahead and introduce another class here for empty4, margin top of 4 units. And inside here, I'm going to have a column that says essentially, I'm going to have a couple of columns here. Okay, first one will be of column 2, and I will explain what it's going to be used for in a short while. But it's not going to be of immediate interest to us. But I'm still going to go ahead and define that column. Okay, so let's say col of LG2. Okay, and it's going to have we can have an empty 2 here as well, margin top of 2. Let's see what we get here. Okay, so not 2x, which is just 2. Okay, so we're going to come back to this in a bit, but we'll go over to the next column, which is of importance to us, where we're going to display all our dishes, all right, with the metadata, the picture, the title, and the description. All right, and in here, I'm going to go ahead and define another column, and that's going to be of call LG10. Okay, essentially for LG and above, which means for medium and below, the responsive design is going to come into play. The column sizes are going to vary from LG and below. Okay, LG and above is always going to be of 10 columns. And in here, I'm also going to say empty margin top of 2. Super. Right, I'm not sure why it comes at times, why it doesn't come at times. Oops, there we go. So inside of here, this is again going to be a to-do, so I'm going to do a comment here. And I will have to define a few methods or functions which will essentially do the display of the dishes here. Okay, display and dishes. So we have this basic structure in place, and what we need to do now is to query our API for the dishes, right? And that's all that's pending here. And to do this in a consistent way, what we're going to do here is we're going to have an API layer, which is essentially going to invoke our APIs, okay? And I'll put it right inside of source. So right inside of source, I'm going to create another directory, and that's going to be called API. And inside of API, I'm going to be creating another a folder, and that's going to be for, in this case, it's going to be for dishes. So because we're going to be querying the dishes, right? So let's go ahead and say new folder, and this is going to be for dish. And in here, I'm going to create a JavaScript file and I'm going to call that index.js. So over here, what I'm going to, first thing I want to do is import Axios, all right, from our util folder. So let's go ahead and do that. I think if I'm right, we exported it as a named export, so we have to use curly braces. So let's go over to index.js. I'm going to say import Axios instance. Axios instance. Okay, that was pretty smart from the editor. Let me collapse the sidebar. Okay, super. And after this, we're going to essentially have a function here that says export const get dish list. All right. And this is going to be an arrow function, of course. And let's also make this async, because that way, we can use the async await syntax in this particular case. So let's see. First thing is I'm going to go ahead and introduce a try catch, as always, when we do the await async await syntax, right? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have a result object, and that's going to await on Axios instance, and this is going to be a get method. This is going to be on /API /dishes. Okay, and that's about it. This is successful. I'm going to say return the result back to the caller. Okay, in fact, I can just say it's dishes here, just to make sure that we're close to the domain as opposed to being very neutral. And I'm just going to go ahead and return the result, which is the return dishes. Okay, super. And in the error handling, I'm going to console log the error. Okay, and for that, I'm going to use the Control-Alt-L, which we've done before. Super. And I'll throw the error up the chain to the caller. Super. So we have a function which essentially acts as an interface between the UI and the API already. Essentially does all the heavy lifting of communication between the UI and the API, thanks to Axios, of course. So it does that, and we have this ready. Okay, and let's head over to the catalog.js now. So in here, what I'm going to do is I want this method to be called right at the time of component load. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use the use effect hook from React, and simply go ahead and import this use effect. We'll also need useStateHook to maintain the dishes array. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and say import useState as well here. All right, and the next thing you want to do is use the use effect here. Okay, I'm going to define the use effect. This is going to be the first thing that's going to be invoked on component load. In here, I need to call the API, and since the API is going to be using async await syntax, I cannot call it inside the hook. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to define a new method called const init, and this is going to be an arrow function. And what it's going to do is call this particular API that we define here in the dish index.js. Okay, so this is going to be the dish get dish list. So let's go ahead and import this up front, and let's go over here. I'm going to say import get dish list, one level above, another level above, API /dish. Okay, and because it's index.js, and that's going to be inferred automatically. Inside of init here, what I'm going to do is call this particular get dish list function. Okay, so let me go ahead and use the try catch. I'm going to say call the get dish list function. Okay, so I'm going to say const dishes and essentially call the await here, so which means I need to make this async, and this is going to be wait and get dish list. Okay, we're going to have a state variable. Okay, and that's going to be called dishes. Okay, so which means we had to essentially say, let's say it's result instead of dishes, and just avoid the conflict there. So I'm going to define a state variable here called dishes and set dishes, obviously, and this is going to be set to a use state of empty array. This is going to be empty at the start, and when it essentially executes, we get the result, and we populate this stuff here. With this in place, we have pretty much everything here. So when we actually save this, we should be seeing the dish API getting triggered, the get dishes API getting triggered, and we should essentially be seeing it in the console. So let's go ahead and console log this data just to understand how it looks like. Control-Alt-L. Super. And inside of error, we already have the error data, right? I'm going to first essentially check if the response object is present, which means, let's say this error is coming from Axios, right? Error.response. Then we will console log the error.response.data. Control-L. Super. And we will be taking the data part of it, and of course the error. And let's see how it actually works. Now I have to essentially call this inside the method and inside the useEffect hook, of course. Let me create some space here. I think they're too closely aligned right now. I'm console logging this. I can call init inside here. Okay, let's say init here. If I do this, I should be able to see something from here, and I would like to see in the console here right now. It is not going to impact the UI per se, but essentially it will have the console populated with the dish data. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to go ahead and save this now, and we should be able to see something. Oh, not this Control S on the editor. Super. Do I see anything at all? Yeah, I see some results here. Super. Excellent, guys. We're getting some results here already. So all of the data is in the result. It's in the data object. So we can actually go into the data object and look for the dishes here, right? So the data object itself is an array. Okay. So what we're going to do here is essentially we're going to go inside here, and I'm going to call this set dishes. I'm going to set it to result.data. Alright, so now our dishes object should have some data. Okay, the dishes state object. Okay, so I have this React Components plugin for the Chrome browser, and it allows me to look at different states and that are carried by different components. So right now we have everything here from, let's say, the app, catalog and stuff like that. So if I go to the catalog object or catalog component, this is the state that I see, which is a list of all our dishes. Okay, super. We are making good progress here. And the next thing we want to do is feed this into some presentable form. Let's take that up in the next class. I'll kind of split this here into another class where I'll explain how we can use this data and present this in some format of, let's say, cards. Okay, so let's take a pause here. We'll come back soon.